So there's so much to say about my guest today that I need to read this out. Today I'm joined by someone who brings a remarkable blend of heart experience and integrative thinking to cancer care. Aga is a cancer nurse specialist at the Royal Surrey Hospital, a cancer educator, a health empowerment coach with over 23 years of frontline oncology and research experience. Alongside her clinical expertise, she is trained in personal performance coaching and NLP, bringing a deeply human, psychologically informed approach to supporting people through life's most challenging moments. She's also the co-chair of the British Society of Integrative Oncology, a researcher, a cancer coach, and the author of Empowerment for Health and Wellness. One of the core reasons I wanted to bring her onto the podcast is her powerful work with EFT, Emotional Freedom Techniques. She chairs the EFT International Research Committee and is deeply involved in bringing evidence-based tapping practices into mainstream cancer support and trauma recovery. What I love about Aga is her whole person approach. She blends science, compassion, energy work, and practical tools to help people to rediscover resilience and meaning. And she's one of the most positive, kindest people I've ever met. I'm really excited for you to hear this conversation with Aga Kehinde. Aga, welcome.
Thank you so much, John. What an introduction, right? In the simple language, I'm a nurse who cares. That's it. That's the easiest one to say. And thank you so much for inviting me here. And I know, John, your work and your passion for integrating different modalities into what patients' experience should really be it's incredible. And thank you for all your work and your heart that you're putting into this podcast. And everyone who is listening to it, you are so lucky to have him.
Thank you. Aga, before we get into EFT, how did you get into cancer nursing in the first place and why?
It's a really good question. People asking me that. It was probably a mix of passion for people's stories. I always, since I was a little girl, I had this passion in me. I loved people's stories, and I always wanted to work. Well, now stepping back a little bit, I'm from Poland, and I was growing up in the big neighborhood, and I was born in late 70s into 80s, and when I was like young teenage, of course we were going through a lot of difficulties in my neighborhood, mostly due to like alcohol abuse and like that sort of thing. So we had a lot of people around, lurking and things, and I was known in the neighborhood that I know everybody's story, right? Everyone's stories. And I was always going back into my grandma, and I said, I really like, and this guy and that guy and that guy. And she was like, Aga, if you really want to know people's story, you should be a nurse. That's what she said to me. And I was like, okay, well, let's go into nursing school. So that's how I started my nursing career in a nursing school. And then I absolutely fall in love. And my first biggest impact of a patient, because of course we're going through all this similar to what's in here in the UK, but we were more hands-on from the beginning rather than learning first and then going to the placement like here in the UK. And from the very first time I was placed in the palliative care unit for young people, I absolutely fell in love with the cancer care, and kind of looking into the impact is a lifelong impact on patients themselves, but also for the whole ecology of patients, so their families, their friends, their loved ones. And I really, really fell in love with the cancer care as a general, and that's how I decided to stick to a cancer care.
So what was the transition to become a coach and a therapist from nursing?
Yeah, so fast forward, good 20 years. When I came into UK, I started my career in the NHS work, and that was at what we call now Royal Surrey Cancer Centre. And I've been really lucky because the place I worked was so open to growth and to kind of developing yourself as a nurse. And I always liked that aspect. I wanted to do more all the time. So at some point, before COVID, I found myself doing two jobs under one full-time equivalent, three actually, to be honest, there were three jobs. So I was a clinical nurse specialist and the lead nurse for acute oncology services. For those of you who are going through the cancer treatment, you may know what that means is, we're looking after patients who are on anti-cancer treatment, and they've become unwell at home and they need to admission to the hospital, they are usually admitted under acute oncology team, and they may not necessarily be placed in the oncology unit. Therefore, we have teams that are not oncology specializing, the surgical team, the medical team. We know that patients with cancer not only suffer from the consequences of cancer, but have other diseases as well. So we may have cancer patients who are being treated by surgical or medical team. So what at that point of time, a few years back, when we were just setting up that acute oncology services, was a lot about training other teams, making bridges, making connections, making sure that the right decisions are made and our cancer patients are looked after in the right way according to the cancer protocol. So there was a lot of education around it, but at the same time, it was a lot about, how long do we keep patients on that? When can we move them into cancer unit? When should we discharge them? And with the pressure of, Christmas and then COVID pressure, there was a lot of very practical work, a lot of negotiations with teams, a lot of pushing backs, fighting for beds, all that sort of thing. So very much managerial side. But I also at the same time had other two roles. And one of them was cancer education. That was a Macmillan sponsored job. And it was really nice because it allowed me to train people across the trust what cancer is and how cancer care looks. So kind of dwell into that a little bit more. And then I was given an opportunity to also have a role of cancer of unknown primary, which is quite challenging role itself. So cancer nurse specialists, you may know what they do. They kind of, they have a one type of cancer. They work with their consultants, with their team, and they look after their patients. Cancer of unknown primary is slightly different. So I've got this aspect, but also it has an aspect of quite heavy breaking bad news practices almost on the daily basis, because cancer of unknown primary, my mouth now kind of playing around, cancer of unknown primary is where the patients are, usually in the community, they fit in well, and all of a sudden they have this unexpected pains and aches and that sort of things. And when they're coming into the hospital, they got the tests because they're feeling really unwell, and the tests show that the cancer already spread, but we don't know the primary of the cancer. And, very often that may mean for some people that there is no treatment available anymore because the progressive of the disease is quite fast. So we need to have those, what we call breaking not nice news conversation or breaking bad news conversation. So I was exposed to that on the daily basis. So you can see how I needed to juggle a lot of, that managerial side of it. So fighting for beds, but at the same time, crafting a little bit of time and getting into the rooms and having an in-depth conversation with patients and holding a safe space for them. So I've noticed at some point that I am burning out, basically, and doing all this at the same time as witnessing people's tragedies, people traumas on the daily basis, and really holding a space for them and witnessing how different style of conversations are being held by different people, different consultants, different doctors, because we all have a different style. Some of us are more trained and aware of trauma and impact. Some of us are not. Someone can hold the psychologically safe spaces. So I really found myself holding a lot of trauma. So I started burning out, noticing some unhealthy habits creeping in, like not sleeping well and then scrolling on the phone a little bit more, watching a little bit, not looking after myself. And then I got into a point in which I said, well, I don't really want to do this anymore. And that was for me a pivotal point in which I realized, like, hold on a minute, nursing is my passion. I always wanted to do it. And now I'm in the position I want to move away from it. So luckily, I had that still in me that I need help. So I recognized that I need help. So I went and asked for help in the Fountain Center, which, for those of you who are familiar with Royal Surrey Hospital, this is like holistic integrative center in which there is a psychological and emotional help provided for patients. Is a charity. Is an amazing thing. You can check that out. And at that point of time, they offered me a coach. And I took that offer and I had that first session in which, as a coachee, so from the perspective of kind of patients coming in to the space, I felt absolutely empowered and so motivated into, like, if you can do that for me, then I feel so empowered after feeling all this stuff, I want to be able to do that to my staff. So that's how I kind of, I went then and I asked my bosses saying, like, can you pay for the coaching training? And they said, yes, that's fine. So I started my coaching training, but after a very short period of time, and if you do any training around coaching or self-development, you start working on yourself a lot. So after a while, I went back into the Fountain Center and I said, can I use your space and be supervised by your coaches to do the coaching on staff? But luckily, instead of having a first coaching person to be a staff, they give me a patient. They said, listen, you're going to feel comfortable with cancer patients and do your coaching. And I was like, okay. So that's what I did. And that was the point in which I realized how coaching style conversation, how this approach of empowering patients, of working with them for their agenda, not mine as a healthcare professional, it made me feel like I'm at home. So I then absolutely fell in love with it, and I decided to move away from that managerial role. So I've left that role and that CNS role as well, and I only stay in the hospital as a cancer educator and as a coach. So and that's how I built the rest of it. So once you do the coaching, you want to be able to learn more modalities. So that's where NLP came into place. That's when mindfulness-based therapies come in place. And that's how I build that integrative approaches into my practice, but also being in the position of educator, I start implementing some trainings and courses and things into a practice of my nurses and doctors, and looking to research around that. So how doctors communicate, all that built of my experience of almost burning out. So I said it was God-given, right? That experience to kind of direct me into the different places. So this is where I am right now. I still have a lot of patient contact. So I practice cancer coaching in the Synthesis Clinic, which is a private, not only private, we also get some other patients, but it's an integrative oncology clinic in which I can practice as a cancer coach and EFT practitioner. And in the hospital, I focus mostly on research and projects around how do we take patients' experience of healthcare professionals in the realms of psychological, emotional, and spiritual support. So I support staff, yes, you're absolutely right, of how do they recognize themselves, but also how to communicate, how to take patients' voices into their practice and be really aware of it. So we don't re-traumatize patients, and that's that sort of, so we don't do more damage to a patients, but we actually empower them. So I'm very focused on both. I would not like to ever move away from working with patients and just with staff equally, just with patients, not with staff. I think those both things need to merge.
There were so many therapies you could use. Why EFT?
This is a really good question, and a lot of people asking me that, and for me, I was going through that different approaches to mindfulness-based therapy and neuro-linguistic programming and cognitive behavior therapies, all that stuff. I was searching a lot and building my practice. And what I've noticed is that talking therapies are absolutely great. Behavioral change is absolutely great. But a lot of my patients and also the staff that I'm working with, the talking aspect of therapeutic interventions are really good, but they require for the nervous system to be in a particular state. So we know that when we are in high distress, our nervous system shoots us in and we go into fight and flight or freeze zone very often. And when we're in the fight and flight and freeze zone, this is where our body kind of gets out of that optimal performance into a performance for fighting or running away or freezing down. Therefore, we disconnect the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for logical thinking, for empathetic approaches, all that sort of things that we need to create a good communication between patients and staff. So for patients, just going through the cancer experience very often brings them out of that, calm rest and digest zone into a fight and flight zone. So they're already disadvantaged when they're coming in through the door of the cancer center. And we as a staff, we know that that's what happened. But when there you've got staff on the other side that kind of go into this fight and flight response all the time, every day, they kind of meeting together in a very disadvantaged position in which one cannot really take much from the other. They can listen, they can co-regulate, they just can't do any of those things. And talking yourself out of it, it's possible, and it has been for a long time, but we know that with psychological approaches, that talking therapies, they take a long time, and there is a lot of understanding and meaning making. So this is why we have a lot of cognitive behavior therapy. So we kind of recognizing the emotions, we're changing a behavior, and again we can talk about it. So for that, again, is what's required is that cognitive function, which we may not have if we're in a fight and flight response. And this is what I was missing in my practice. I realized it doesn't matter how much we talk, my patients still go into that fight, flight, freeze response in their body. So that's what really made me think about and explore trauma, what trauma is, and of course my own experience of the visceral trauma that I was taking on from different conversations. I could understand that this is not my experience, but why do I feel what I feel in my body? Why do I have the knot in my stomach? Why do I feel the sadness in my chest? All that things. And that's what led me into exploring trauma, and that the trauma really sits in the body. And because trauma sits in the body, we need a body approach in order to downregulate and process trauma. So that's what led me into exploration of different somatic techniques. That's what we call them, is a body-based technique. And there is many of them. So there's a breath work, that's very somatic. There's self-havening, that's very somatic. Any movements, that's all somatic. But I stumbled across a colleague of mine who came and did a little presentation of emotional freedom technique. And I had it myself. So, she was doing it and we were doing it together. And I realized how that made me feel. So very similar with the coaching. I was like, oh, if you can do that for me, I want to do it for other. So the same with that EFT. I was like, if you can make me feel less anxious, worry, sad when I'm still thinking about those really difficult experiences, I want to be able to do that to my patients. So that's how I start learning about EFT and training, and then doing a research in it. And and this is where I am now, because EFT is probably the best. I'm going to say it because I'm biased in here. So, everyone else who comes with a different modality will say the best. But for me at the moment, is the best on the market because it mixes a mindfulness with cognitive behavior changes therapy and that somatic aspect. So it blends all together. Is what we call a fourth wave of psycho support, and I think is absolutely amazing.
I totally understand what you're saying about you go through all the thought patterns, and you can meditate, you can do whatever you need to do to calm yourself down, and you can plan where you're going, what you have to do, but you still have that trauma or stress. I found too that I needed something to be in my body. I needed something that was more than just going for a walk. Would you mind taking us through an EFT session?
So there's a few things that I would share before we do the EFT practice, and I do that in a different way, but maybe we'll start from that aspect. So EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques. So there's a bunch of different techniques within the terminology of EFT, and what it means, more. You can do it for self-help, and this is what I'm going to share with you, but you also can be very specific. So when you work with practitioner or advanced practitioner, they can kind of wave in the different practices into it, like working with with some trauma from the past, with inner child, all those terminology that may be familiar to you from the timelines and that sort of thing. So there's many different ways of working with EFT, but the bottom line of EFT is if you do it for yourself, you're doing it when you need it. As a practitioner, I also teach people to use EFT as a hygiene practice. So you do it anyway, whether you need it or not, because you're building that neural pathway in which your brain kind of goes into it immediately when it feels under distress. So there is a little pathway for that, but you normally would do it when you need it. So let's say if you feel any stress in your body, and practice of EFT really starts from self-awareness. How do I know I feel my body is under stress, right? And it could be, I also say, I always say it comes from three things. So what's in your head? Is there a ruminating thought? Is there a thought that sits somewhere in the back that you really don't want to look at it in the given moment? Is the thought that, you constantly far ahead and thinking about something that may not have happened yet, or it potentially may happen? So that's the anxiety. Or are you not processing right what happened in the past, and is still any little memory of it brings your body into distress? So that's your head. And then you go a little bit lower here, I would say, in your heart area, when I explore the emotions, right? So what do you feel? So some of us very emotive, so you can wake up in the morning, the thought isn't there yet, but you already feel a knot in your stomach and heavy chest, like there is something lurking there, but you're not sure what it is. That's emotion. Or the third one, which is very often under underestimated, and that's what your body is telling you. So very easy way of checking whether you are in the fight flight zone is, what's your muscle tension right now? Are you clenching your jaw? Is your forehead like this? Is your shoulders relaxed, right? Is your breath deep enough? Just start measuring these things. And 0 to 10, 0 is like I'm totally relaxed. And when I'm saying totally relaxed, it's in your head, like in between, like either meditation stage, or when you have a good cry and you go, and then there's nothing. You don't think about past, you don't think about the future, you just hear. That's your 0, right? You totally relax. And your body is that moment in which you like after spa or a good nice sauna or something, like you can recognize that is, yeah, everything is just like like that. That's your 0. That's the starting point, right? And 10 on the other side of the scale, this is subjective units of distress, is you can't stop thinking about things, right? It's there and it's constantly taking you to the future, taking you to the back, and you can't stay in the present moment. And the feeling you recognize this massive sadness or anxiety or anger, or you will know your 10. The 10 is like, I just want to get up in here and run away because you need to fight or flight. And the same with your body, pains, aches, muscle tension, measure it, right? So this is a really good starting point for tapping. And let's just do that for a moment. So if I invite you to do this first, so just put your feet on the floor. If you're sitting down on the chair, just put attention to your lower back. Okay, don't force anything. This is not forced relaxation here, it's just an awareness. So if this is available to you, if you can lower your gaze or close your eyes and just for a moment, get into your head and witness your thoughts. Is there anything that comes into your head? Is this something that you're constantly thinking about from the future, from the past? Is there a thought that you're aware of that sits somewhere in the back of your head and you don't really want to look at it? Just awareness of it. We don't want to know what it is. Don't want to look at it. We don't want to put a light on it yet. We just want to know if there is anything that at the back of the head. Just make yourself aware of your thoughts. Is there any ruminating thought? There may be a thought of, oh my God, I don't like her accent or something like that. Do you know what I mean? Like it could be something that just kind of gets play in your head, or this is taking too long, or can she get on with it? Whatever that may be, right? That thought. And then go a little bit lower, take a nice few breaths in and think about emotion. So maybe there is emotion that you're constantly feeling. And again, you will living with so many lurking emotions, this ongoing sadness when I'm thinking about something. Maybe there's a fear when you're thinking about that thought that is the back of your head. Maybe there is experience from the past that every time you think, it brings you this unexpected anger or resentment or sadness, whatever that may be. Okay, that's the feelings. And then the last one, get into your body. If feelings is not available to you, I work with many people that feelings isn't available. They just don't feel the feelings, or they block the feelings. And, the thoughts that they don't want to get into a thoughts. So the body is a good starting point. So move your head into the right, into the left. Just notice without forcing where your head is turning. Just give a little wiggle on your shoulders. Put attention to your back, lower back, your hip area. And just measure. 0 is totally relaxed and 10 is like, I'm really tense right now. So it could be 5, 6, 7, it could be only 3. It doesn't really matter. It's subjective. And then if that's not available to you, I can guarantee you can measure your breath. Okay, so without expanding your breath, just take a nice 2 breaths in. Don't put it more air in, just do it as you do it. And then think about it. If 100% of my lung capacity is my 0, and my 0, right, is like I can just fully breathe, and my 10 is like my breath is cut right here. Where would you be on the scale? 0, totally relaxed. I'm using all my lungs, all quarters of them, all the way to the belly. And 10 is like I am, I caught my breath right in here. So again, measure. It's all about biofeedback. It's all about knowing yourself where you are with that subjective unit of distress. And then we're going to do something now. And I'm not going to tell you what we're doing in terms of what's the science behind. We're just going to do it. So think about that number that you just put. Okay. And now start tapping on the side of the hand. So tapping is just below your pinky, just right there. Okay. And breathe and tap and focus on what is your number and why that number is that high. Okay, so if this is a ruminating thought, that's okay. Just think about, this thought, it make me 7 out of 10 right now. Or if this is the feeling in my chest, the sadness I have, like I'm thinking about something and it really makes me sad. Or maybe there is something that you're anticipating and that brings a little bit of anxiety, right? It could be anxiety about the future, anxiety about if you're thinking about cancer space in here, I've got scan in next 2 weeks. And every time I'm thinking about it, so that's the thought at the back of the head I don't want to think about, but every time I do, it gets me, right? It creates this feeling of anxiety in my chest, or this knot in my stomach, or raises my shoulder up. And if that's not available, think about your body, my muscles are a little bit tense, maybe my breathing isn't really deep. So I am 5 out of 5. I'm going to do one more round in here. And then what we do after we tap a little bit on the hand, and I will do second round with you with words, we start tapping at the beginning of the eyebrow. So we use 2 fingers and we tap. So tapping comes from the fact that we're actually tapping, and we tap right here at the beginning of the eyebrow. And then we tap on the side of the eye. I'm taking you through tapping points. There is 8 of them, and we tap all of them. And then under the eye is the 3rd tapping point. And again, bring attention into the number. And how you identify that number is that a thought, feeling of all the body sensation. Under the nose is next tapping point. There's a few weird points, but just trust the process for now. If it's the breath, just put attention into your breath. Whatever made you think that number and what's related into that number, think about this now. On the chin, next tapping point. So there is a little indentation, and that's where we tap, on that indentation of the chin. And then we have another tapping point, which is here on the collarbone. So if you have a tie, it will be right on the side of that tie there. That's it. Keep tapping, keep breathing. Okay. So again, if you are doing this for the self-help and you've identified, well, I'm really angry right now, something said something, maybe I had a phone call with the healthcare professional and they really didn't listen to me, and I could feel my blood pressure is going up. I could feel the anger in me. And anger, you will feel in different ways. It will be short of breath, you will be heat in your body, you will be knot in the stomach, different ways. So identifying that and then tapping by just going, I can feel this anger, I can feel this feeling. And the next tapping point is under your armpit. So this is probably about an inch down from your armpit. Yeah, that's it. That's the perfect point. Also on the nipple level. That's it. And then the last tapping point is the top of your head. So we stop tapping under the armpit and tap on the top of the head. Okay. So that's one round of tapping. We now stop. We take a nice deep breath in and out. And one more in and out. Do we have a time to do one more quick round?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. So this is where we being a little bit more targeted here. So we start tapping on the side of the hands. I always do 2 rounds. And now this number could change. It could go down, it could stay the same, or it could go up sometimes. And there's no wrong or right. There is something that we call this processing. So, when we start focusing on the feelings, we're exposing that feeling. So let's say some of you identified that hidden thought that is there, but I don't really want to think about it. But now nervous system calm down a little bit and say, well, now I'm ready. I want to actually have a look at it. So let's say there is a thought at the back of a head that brings us a anxious emotion. So we are becoming a little bit more targeted at it. And that's the exposure part of EFT. So we're actually being very specific. So let's say the thought is the worry of the scan results that I'm having next week, right? So it's there. I don't want to think about it every day. Yeah, I want to do stuff to numb that thought, to not to look at it, but it's there. And that thought's going to be coming up and creeping up at you in unexpected times, usually, during the night, first thing in the morning. It will creep on you, when you're doing something that you don't really think about much, and it was just like, I'm here, so you better look at me because I'm not going anywhere. I'm still here, right? And that thought creates an emotion. It could be a fear, it could be anxiety, fear of so many things that we don't need to go into those things, but there is a fear. And that fear usually feels somewhere, probably your chest, maybe stomach, maybe your head, it doesn't matter. So with this, we say words out loud. So I will say it. You don't have to repeat after me, just keep it in your head. So we'll say, even though I have this thought and it makes me anxious and I can feel that anxiety in my stomach, right here, right now, I'm safe. Even though I have this thought and that thought makes me really anxious in my body, I can feel it. I can feel my tense body. I can feel this feeling in my chest. When I think about this, right here, right now, I'm okay. So even though I'm thinking about this, or even though this thought sits at the back of my head all the time, and it makes me feel scared, makes me anxious, right here, right now, I'm okay. And I accept this is how I feel. This is how I feel when I think about it. So it's you not accepting the thought, you accepting yourself having the fear when you think about the thought. So that's the exposure. Okay, and then we start tapping at the beginning of the eyebrow. So routine goes exactly the same, but now what we do, we say how that fear feels. We go, this fear in my stomach, on the side of the eye. Or if there's a heat wave, you go, this heat wave of fear or anxiety in my body. Or whatever you identified. So if this is a tension in your arms, you will go under the eye, this tension in my arms when I'm thinking about this thing. Under the nose, or this shortness of breath when I think about this thing. Whatever that was, you just bring a little bit more attention into how that manifests for you on the chin. And just keep breathing to it and let your nervous system, because that's what we're doing. We're looking at the thing, the thought, the sensation that creates a response in the nervous system. And the response in the nervous system, we need to do something about it. We need to run away or we need to fight. Or if we can't do anything and it's too much, we will freeze. But there is a response. So the tapping, the motion of tapping, I tap on the collarbone, the motion of tapping, this somatic aspect sends electrical signal into our amygdala that is responsible for alarming the nervous system, saying, even though you have this thought, even though that thought makes you feel this, right here in this room right now, you, nervous system, can calm down. It's okay. So you start now thinking about the future and not having this nervous system response that disadvantage you, right? Because we know if we're in a fight and flight, we'll produce cortisol that links into, inflammations in the body, right? We will feel pain more. We won't think clear, we produce adrenaline, testosterone, all the hormones that are actually doing the service to us. So what we want to do by tapping while we're seeing the issue, down-regulate your nervous system. You don't need to produce cortisol. You don't need to fight or flight. You can face this adversity, whatever that is, with the calm, collected, and connected body. Under the armpit. So that's what tapping is about. It's about exposing yourself to the fears and anxieties in a safe way, on the top of the head, because no one's going to take away that scan that is coming. No one's going to take away, right, the different results of it, but we can down-regulate our nervous system to the point in which we won't be in that fight, flight, fear response. Okay, take a nice deep breath in and out. And now measure again what's in the head, what's in the feeling, what's in the body. Is it changed? Go down, up, stay the same. There's no right or wrongs in here. So that's in a nutshell what EFT can do.
If someone has got a very short space of time and they need to just really quickly go through.
If I advise people to, when they have just a moment, just tap on the collarbone like that with few breaths. So focus on your breath. And I like triangle breathing method in here. So just tap on the collarbone. If you have only a few minutes before a meeting, before the session, I see my patients tapping before they go to consultation room. Just tap and go in through your nose, out with the mouth, and hold at the bottom. So it's like you are imagining a triangle. So again, in through your nose, out with your mouth, hold at the bottom. If you do 90 seconds of that, so a minute and a half, we know that it down-regulates your nervous system really quickly. Okay. So that's when you have a little bit of time just before, right? But if you're on the phone with someone and you feel that is regular, just tap, 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 tap on the collarbone. That's it. I call this motorway to your nervous system, tapping on the collarbone.
Wow.
Yeah, I hope that's helpful. I hope, for those of you who are watching us, you've tried it and have a look. There is a lot of resources. There is a great resource. It's called Oncio app, ONCIO app, in which I introduce a lot about EFT. I wrote the article about the research around the EFT in cancer, and there's a few different videos that you can try EFT. So have a look at that. There is a lot of resources, and definitely for the self-help tool, this is something I highly recommend, because you're working with your nervous system in the midst of adversity, which causes a lot of stress. So you're really helping your body to downregulate so you don't suffer with post-traumatic stress and post-traumatic injury, which any conversation around cancer can cause.
There are a lot of people going through their own cancer journeys right now. So what message would you like to give to those people?
Yes, find what works for you, and find something that works for you that down-regulate your nervous system. So first of all, it's about self-awareness. So how do I know I am in that disadvantaged position of being stressed? Because knowing that will then empower you to do something about it. Because the aim for us is to be in that out of that fight and flight zone, in which then we can regulate, co-regulate, we can make a better informed decision. We are not operating from the fear-based response, which normally the stress will put us in, because that will disadvantage us. That will make other people make a decision for us. That will make us rush into decisions. That will make us a visual, the tunnel vision, so we won't be open to different possibilities. And trust your body can do it, because your body can down-regulate to the point in which you can help yourself to create a healthy environment, both on the cellular level, but also psychologically and emotionally. So find the tool that works for you, whether that's breath work, whether that's, cognitive behavior therapies, whether that's EFT, anything that will down-regulate your nervous system quickly, because you know yourself best.
And it's so important to have agency when you're going through
Yes.
any stressful situations, especially for a serious illness. Yeah.
Yes. And reach out for help. And if you want to learn more, there is so much around. Yeah.
Aga, thank you so much for your time
Pleasure.
and explaining EFT. I've seen lots of explanations, but that was far more in depth. And I really do thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. And enjoy all. Thank you.